Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have a smooth game to share with you from the 2007 Linares tournament. On the white end, 16-year-old Magnus Carlsen, and he's playing against Vasyl Ivanchuk. Okay, I think that this is an excellent model game against the Grünfeld. We have an exchange Grünfeld, and the focus for these next few moves is going to be on the d4 square. Black's going to put pressure there, and White's going to arrange his pieces so that he can support it adequately. So here we go with the fianchetto. Not a bad diagonal for the light square bishop, pointing at the weakest square, f7. You wouldn't want to go to d3, you're not as active, and you're also in the way. Queen can't see d4 directly. Okay, there's a reason the bishop is out and about this early. It's because the king-knight wants to be on e2 with this setup. Now, you certainly wouldn't want to be on e2 if the bishop is still on home base. White would experience a coordination issue. Now, why is the knight going to e2 rather than his favorite square, f3? It's because at some point, black can pin the knight. I emphasize at some point because playing it right now is tactically flawed. Bishop takes f7, knight g5 check, and there goes the bishop. But certainly with some prep work by black, like castles, once the rook is there securing f7, this idea to pin the knight and eliminate a key defender of d4 is there. What's the difference with the knight on e2? Well, any bishop g4 can now be met with f3, and the pin is broken. So in short, we can say the knight on e2 is not as actively posted, but a reliable defender of d4. All right, queenside minors play a role, attack and defense of d4, both sides castle. Black goes after the bishop. No way. b6. Okay, the reply here is rook c1. Trying to win a pawn like this is not really recommended because black would have excellent play on the queen side. There is one square that sticks out to me here. It's the knight getting to c4, and also the queen positions in this position. This is a very stable square for the black queen, and I'm not sure where the comfortable square for the white queen would really be within this environment, within this structure. In any case, white of course recognizes the strength in this ideal pawn center, so he keeps it and gets the rook off of the main diagonal. Now, the reply here by black is to exchange on d4. We're exchanging c-pawns. This rook can now see the world. The computer has a bit of an issue with this. It's a slight one, but this is one of those games where there's this gradual improvement for white. And this is maybe the very beginning of this gradual improvement. I want to draw some attention to this important middle game position. What does the computer want to play here? It says, increase the pressure on d4. Don't be so quick to justify white's last move. Don't be so quick to open up the c file. Now, this move e5, before you can play that move, there's a lot you must digest. The structure can change in a few different ways. Do you have a good sense of each of these structures? We're going to have a look at three of them, both captures and then the push. The captures are considered equal. The push, not so much. It likes black, in fact. Let's first look at what's considered the equalish continuations. This one right here. White still works with the pawn duo. All right, it's just shifted to the right a little bit. No d4 and e4, but instead e4, f4. That's one way. Another is to capture on c5 and play this down a pawn as black, but again, black has play on the queen side. The rook is looking good. The knight getting into c4 is looking good. And also this knight on e2, black kind of points his finger. at that piece within this structure and says, you're ridiculous. It's a very poorly positioned knight. Can have follow-up moves, queen b8, rook c8, very active play for the black pieces on the queen side. Finally, in reply to e5, d5, very, very tempting move, but bad. Very tempting because normally this is great. I have now a connected passed pawn. Why is that not good? Well, check this line out as an example. f5, f3, f4 with tempo, c4 with tempo. I know I'm making a lot of moves, but here we are within this very fixed structure. Who stands better? Well, white has space here, pawn in the center, but black has space here and here. But let's just focus in this structure on these two pawns. It's very difficult for white to coordinate with this guy right here. It's easily blockaded. Black can interact with this guy. He could coordinate with the f-pawn. Black has this idea to play g5, g4. This is a position you will see, it's very similar, I should say, to a King's Indian defense, Mar del Plata, but the big difference here is that it is locked up on the queen side. This is normally the side of the board where white will be looking to play in the King's Indian defense, but now it's completely bottled up on the queen side. And what do? What would white's active plan be here? He kind of just has to sit and wait. There's no great way to interact with this guy here. So this is not a good structure for white to get himself into. Look at this poor knight. Again, doesn't even have a square here. In any case, e5 is the suggestion here. A lot you have to, again, digest before making that move. In this game, the c file is opened up. Black goes with e6. You may think about, well, let's just go ahead and fianchetto right away, but if you're doing that, there's d5, and now if you try to challenge, you're saying, I'm okay taking on an isolated e-pawn. So it is first e6, fending off the d5 advance, queen d2, forming a battery, connecting rooks. Black's now ready to put the bishop on b7. From here, h4. This is my favorite move of the game. It's a poison pawn. That's not why it's my favorite move of the game. It's my favorite move of the game because I think many players, well, I think what's tempting, let me say it like this. I think what's tempting is to say to yourself, hey, what piece isn't playing? Hey, where is there an open file? Hey, let's double on the C file. Let's form a battery. Batteries are great, right? You really end up just going nowhere. We end up just exchanging rooks if you focus on forming a battery on the C file. What is white looking to do by playing h4? He's looking to establish a thorn in black's side. He's looking to have this pawn be a disruptor to black's king side. h5, are you going to play h6? Are you going to capture on g6? It's difficult for black to answer these questions or have a reply to these moves. You'll note the king knight, right? With this Grünfeld defense, what knights are exchanged very early on, the black's king knight and white's queen knight. If there's no king knight around when there's this fianchetto on the king side, when this guy's on g6, this idea to rush the pawn up to h5 is that much more appealing because king knight is not around to watch over this advance. So this is a nice way to try and break down black's king side and create some weaknesses. This guy is poison. The reply here is queen e7. If the pawn is picked up, the queen is trapped. She'd be trapped. Bishop g5. And where are you going? You got two options. Let's have a look at this one first. Queen h5 met with knight g3 and bishop e2. She's a goner. One other variation is after bishop g5, suppose the queen goes here first? Well, we give her a kick with f3, and then knight g3. She's a goner again. So, the h-pawn, poison. In the game, queen e7, h5, rook f to c8, e5. So with e5, there's now a focus on a couple squares. One, f6. White has control over this hole with a pawn, and also g6. The bishop's eyes are now opened to that square. There's a big difference here between the light square bishops. They're not competing for the same diagonal. Each is trying to demonstrate, hey, my bishop is better than yours. Well, white is really the one who's saying, or white's bishop is the better bishop. Okay. It's different if this queen is somehow able to coordinate on g2, but that's not happening. In the game, we get a pair of rooks off. In fact, 2 rooks are coming off, and white is okay initiating the exchange here because that forces black to underdevelop. From here, bishop g5, sneaking in on the dark squares is the play at this stage, the strategy. The reply, queen c7. What is regarded as best? Queen d7 with the idea to at least try and win that d4 pawn, but it's still going to be a very difficult road ahead. Queen c7 in this game, it seems very logical. It is an open file, but if we consider the entry points for the queen, look at these guys here. They're just saying, no way. I got all of those squares covered because of these 2 minor pieces. So this queen could feel a bit more comfortable going in on the attack here towards the king. All right, bishop f6, and the reply here is knight c6. So if black is exchanging, I want to have a look at the exchange and the retreat. If you exchange bishops, now you have to deal with this pawn. You have to deal with queen h6, queen g7, and what do you do to stop that? The queen would have to put pressure on f6, or at least be in a position to go to f8. Queen g5 is very strong, and now there are these ideas as a sacrifice on g7. This is getting broken down, and even if it's defended, white could put his full weight on g6, and there's going to be an accident happening on that square very soon, while this knight watches from the side. Okay, not a good idea to take the bishop, nor is it really a good idea to retreat like this, because again, right around the corner, there is this accident that's going to happen on g6. I'll just show one sample line. Let's say this knight gets back in business. There we go with the check on g6. We can get these captures in, and there you go. The queen is winning the knight. Next, white is up 2 pawns. Completely winning here. So these tricks are there on the g6 square. Black plays it with knight c6. And now there's only one, well, far and away there is one clearly winning move. And Carlsen finds it. Very easy to go wrong here. He plays queen g5. Now, if you try the exchange first and then h6, this seems appealing on the surface, I must say. But after king f8, you're trying to sneak in here, right? But it's poorly timed because the queen could play here and you're not getting to that f6 square. If you're able to get to f6, then you're going to be able to get here and then track the pawn down. You'd have a passer. But black is there in time to stop that maneuver. So that's why white in this position is first starting with queen g5. Now the idea is, let's say black played bishop to b7 here. Now the idea is to take, then give the check, and our queen is in this position already ready to get to f6 and next h8, win the pawn, push this guy through and win. What does black try here to interfere with the idea to take the bishop and then plant the pawn here, followed up with queen f6? He says, go away. He plays h6. Now, For these past few moves, the focus here has been on the kingside. Focused on the f6 square, the g6 square, the pawn getting to h6, all of these kingside squares. Check out this next smooth move. And that is queen coming all the way back to c1. White immediately now reminds black of a pin. This is excellent board vision. We have two things going on now. This point here on the king side, g6, is hanging. Two attackers, one defender, and black also has to sort out this pin. This is two problems too many. What does black try here? Well, he addresses the threat on g6 by playing g5, and now white is able to take full advantage over this pinned knight. Pop quiz here. Which move would you play with the bishop? Would you go to b5 to attack the knight, or e4? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, the better choice, the winning move with the bishop, is b5. Why b5? We're going to see in just a little bit. First things first, though, black must defend the knight. You can't move the knight. Drop the queen. So bishop d7 is the follow-up. And now in comes d5. Beautiful move. This is attacking the pinned knight and also clearing the way for knight d4. Let's pause for a moment. This position right here, how did we get here? We're 25 moves in. White has established two bishops in black's house and three pawns. I think it dates all the way back to this idea right here, advancing that h-pawn. It was a very, very disruptive idea. Beautiful position to take note of. There's not a single piece in white's house, but all of these white pieces in black's house. d4 is now opened up for the knight. Black continues with the capture on d5, and follow-up here is knight d4. And the pin on the knight, white's going to soon win some material. What is the difference if you went to e4 instead of b5? Well, you know, in this very position, if the bishop was on e4, white would have to react to this threat on the bishop. Because the bishop is on b5, white gets to play this advance. After the recapture, there's no threat on the bishop here, and white gets to follow up with knight d4. This guy is toast. We have the exchange of dark square bishops. Black gets out of the pin, but it's too late. White's able to win the minor piece, and what do we have? Two black pawns versus a light square bishop. Some time is now taken out to safeguard the king, to give him a new square. Queen c5. Now, if it's a balanced position material-wise, you may want to think twice about this decision, but white is okay exchanging queens here and giving black connected passed pawns because they're not going to go anywhere. The plan here, punch a hole in the light squares. So how do you do that? You put a little pressure on a pawn that's on a light square. Scare that guy away. Once that pawn moves, there you go. There's the hole. Bishop b5. Is there really a better diagonal for the bishop? You're watching over both pawn advances. They're going nowhere. So now that they are restricted, this is where white can next improve the king. He kicks off first with f4, controlling a dark square. The bishop could always control this square. The idea here, bring the king up to the center, and eventually black's going to run out of moves. White's going to win some more material. This game ends, though, after the exchange on f4. G takes f4. Black simply resigns. He trusts the 16-year-old's technique here in this endgame. What do you even try? If we play out some moves here, how might the game continue? We bring the kings towards the center. White would say, no way, I'm not letting you get here. Let's say that pawn is saved. How are you stopping the king from getting to e4? If the king gets here, he's going to get here, and eventually you run out of moves, and this pawn is going to fall. If you try to stop the king from entering, this is how white can approach it. The king has to stay close to defending this pawn. At any moment, it could be targeted, so something like this we can have, where the king puts pressure here, and the bishop puts pressure here, and this guy cannot defend both. White will soon win a pawn, and it should be very easy to convert it from that point on. But this one goes no further. After the simple recapture on f4, black resigns. Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.